Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Kabbalah Satira, Pashas Yisrael, is all the Hisairis that we can get. As you know, really what's the Torah? The Baruch Shalom created a world and stuck us in it. We need an instruction book. What are you supposed to do? So the Torah is the instruction book of the Maisa Shabbai. Obviously, it's including not just Maisa, it's including Machshava, Dibur, all the things that person has his life in. So I wanted to say over a little bit, Ramazim, which are Negeya to us, and a little bit from Kabbalah Satira, and obviously also Limud Torah. And so first question is that, Yisrael, who at that stage of his life, he was Kohen Ein and Kohen Midyan, he was not from necessarily the good guys, right? He was more from the Shvachara guys. So, but Yisrael is Miloshin Yeser, and if you take the gematria of Yisrael, is how much? Is 616. And the gematria of Torah is a little bit less, right? The 611. So, but they're related, but not mamish. Now we know that why do we say Keteris? We say Keteris. How many Samani Keteris are there? 11. Why 11? Because since there is an Isser, and that's a Makam Achizas Chitzainim, is the when we're over, that's what is the Isser Bal Taisif, right? There's too much, so we have to bring a carbon for it, which is the Keteris, which is basically why it was the minute to say it 3 times a day, because that chases away the Chitzainim. So you see, by Yisrael, he at that point was the chelik of Chitzainim. He was the ultimate, we'll call it bad guy, right? So one of his koiches was that he will be yeser, he will be more, like more than the Taryag mitzvahs, to show that the makam achilas Chitzainim, and that's why. So he was 3 over, right? What was the 3? One was Kohen Midyan, one was Kohen Ein, and one was the Klippa itself, because he represented V'avai Satuma. So there was 3 parts. One was he himself, one was Kohen Ein, one was Kohen Midyan. And he did it dafka in that way to show that he's not frummer than everybody else. He had 616, and that's the Ikabal Taisis, that's the Ikamakam Achizis HaKlipa, that we take it from the extras. And that's where we have to be nizhar to do what we need to do. Just turn the clock. Okay, so that's one thing, Mibchinas Yisrael. Also brought down that Yisrael was Shirish, Yisrael was in Kayin, and Shirish, Moshe was in Hevel. And Yisrael's goal at this point was to be Misakin the Avera of Kayin, that he killed Hevel. And the reason he killed Hevel, because Kayin only had 1 twin born, and Hevel had 2 twins born. He was jealous, so therefore he killed him. So therefore he gave him over his 2 sons, right? It says in the beginning of the parasha, and those 2 sons were, so to speak, be giving over to Moshe to be mechaper and the avera that Kayin did, because he was trying to be mechaper. As we know, Paiked Avain, Avais, Albanim, Shileshim, Ribeim. How many dairis is a person begilgul of an avera? It's 4 dairis that a person has to be misakin the avera of his fathers, grandfathers, and so forth. However, on mitzvahs, that goes, Elif dair, it goes, keeps on going and going and going. So it keeps, you don't have to do anything. That's why yichus is a deal, right? Because you don't have to be misakin as much, because the Maisa, you have schus avos. My father always used to tell me, what's so good about schus avos? That schus avos gives you, like if you're running in a race, you get a head start. But it's only, a head start is only worth something if you run the race, which means that you're doing Maisa avos. If you're not running the race, so what good is a head start if you have to be doing what you're supposed to be doing? Okay. There's no chazak I wanted to say. I'm just going on a few pieces in the psukim. One of the psukim says, "V'yisam li segula." I've spoken a lot recently about segulas, right? This is in first pasuk. How do you know you're supposed to go to Reb Shaila's keva? V'yisam li segula, right? And you get the ala kol tuv the alma if you go there, right? Or if you listen to the hotline and you hear that Iran's going to get bombed yesterday, so right? No, he said he's going to get bombed yesterday. But anyways, on whatever it is. But over here, obviously, we're not talking about a skula. We're talking about v'yisam l'segula means a segal is the way the Rabbeinu Shel Olam created the world with b'chinas segal, and that is what we call hishtalshalus. When things come down from Shemayim, it comes down in a madrega of chesed, din, rachamim. That's cheder, and that is just as like a mashal. The Torah was created with a beis, which is lashon bayis, and what's inside a bayis? Cheder. Right? Every bias has a cheder. So, now the segal represents chesedin rachamim. Now, if you look at a chart of spheres, so we know that what's the difference between a nes al pi teva and a nes shaloi kederech hateva? And that teva happens every day, the same thing. The grass grows, it's not a nes. But try to grow grass on your own, super nes, impossible to copy, right? So, the difference between Nes and Teva is how often it happens. If you look at the chart in the spheres, you'll see that we are people of Zayin Tachtonim. The world is made up of Zayin Tachtonim. Our world today, right? 7 days of the week, and all the sevens that you see is 7 spheres Tachtonis. Everything is going in sevens. And everything that's a 7 has to go, it goes really in 2 parts, 2 segals. The first segal is Chesed Gvura Tiferes. If you look at the chart, you'll see it's Yamin, Smoil, Ensa, with the Ensa being a little bit lower. And the second one is Netzach Hod Yisoid, with the Yisoid being a little bit lower. And then there's the Malchus, which is separate, which that's what we call the Zivug. It's supposed to be Mizaveg, the Zah, with the Nuk, without going into the details on that. So if you look at those charts, you see 2 segals, one on top of the other. But if you look at the top part, right, you'll see that there's a keser, and then comes the chachma ubina. So the keser is being mispashit downwards. That segal is upside down, and that is mirames that the bottom 2. That's the way a segal looks. That's derech hateva. But coming from the El Yainim, which is Shaloi Kederech HaTeva, you see it merumas in the way the Segel is. And that's part of the Pshat, V'yisem li Segula, that whichever way you have to be mekabel, that from coming from the El Yainim is Shaloi Kederech HaTeva, and coming from Tachtoinim is Derech HaTeva, and that is all misugel liyos. That's Pshat, V'yisem li Segula. And it doesn't mean, obviously, what I said earlier, running around all day long and not learning and not doing anything proper, just running to get brachas and skulas and all those things. There's nothing wrong with it, but it shouldn't infringe on a person's avodas Hashem. Okay, when the Torah started off the Aseres HaDibros, so it started off with Anochi, the word Anochi, right? And we know that the Torah did not start with an Aleph, because Aleph we said was Oror, and Oror is pshat that there's no riboy, and since it's talking about Kudsh Brichu, there is no riboy by Kudsh Brichu, because Kudsh Brichu is Echad, Haya, V'yiyeh, it's Echad, right? Hashem Echad, Shmai Echad, there is no double, therefore the Torah could not start for him because there's no riboy. Therefore it had to start with Beis, which is Bereshis, which is already Beriboy, that's part of the Tzimtzum, right? And that's why everything had to be that way. So why is Anochi the Torah, Kabbalah's the Torah, starting off with the Aleph? So as you know, there's a drasha of Ani Rishon v'Ani Acharon. So just what was the pchina that the Torah was giving? What part of the spheres? So it's brought down that it was Keser Malchus. It was the Keser in parts of Malchus. So in the Anochi, so we know there's a pasuk Ani Rishon v'Ani Acharon, right? What's Ani Rishon? That's referring to the Keser, and referring to the Keser is Lashon Ayin. Ani is Oisius Ayin Aleph Yud Nun. And the bottom one, which is the Giloi, which is the Malchus, that is Ani, right? So when you take Ani Rishon is referring to the Ayin, which is the Keser, which is above us, and the Ani Acharon is the Malchus, which is referring to us. Now, if you take the word Ani and you stick in it a Chaf, right? So it becomes Anoichi. That Chaf is showing you the merumas in the Ani is a Chaf of Keser. So it's dafka coming to show you that yes, the Torah is coming from all the way high up from Keser by Kudshabrichu himself, and there's many parts of the Torah which we don't understand one word. But since it's giving to us Mebchinas Malchus, that's why it had to be Keser Malchus. And you see it Merum is in that word Anochi. Before I run out of time, I want to tell you one part that I just thought of while I was learning tonight. So, and it says in the pasuk, and if you look in the Torah, right after this, Vaydav Hashem al Moshe Lemar is a constant in the Torah. So let's just say Vaydav Hashem al Moshe. I once spoke about it before, but I wanted to add one little knage to it. That what is Lemar? So first, what is Amar? Amar is talking, right? So really, where does the word Amar come from? Which gives you a little bit of an idea how Adam Harishon was megula to him how to name everything in the Bria. So the word Amar is made up of Eish, Mayim, Ruach. And if you think of when you talk, it's coming from the Chech and Goren. Those are the first parts of your speaking, right? So included in it is first the heat of the person. When you breathe on somebody, you feel the heat, right? And the Mayim is the spit in your mouth, right? And the Ruach is the air, that's the Hevel. So there's the warmth of the Hevel, of the air, and there's the spit, that's the Mayim, and then there's the Ruach itself. And that's how we get to speak, is from the Chech and Goren, and that's Amar. So you see, it's not just Amar means speak, it's pshat that the chelik of the speaking is the Amar. And what's the Lamar? So we know that the Lamed is called Migdal HaPereach Ba'avir, because it sticks up higher than any other ice, and it's like standing on its own. So who was this said? It was Vaydav Hashem al Moshe Lemar. So Moshe, you be the Amar to Klal Yisrael. And what's the Lam? Miram is that Dafke Moshe, because Moshe was standing head and shoulders above Klal Yisrael. That's Pshat Migdal HaPereach Ba'avir. That's why you put it Dafke as a vart in Lemar. I just want to say that. And then one more thing, I just want to say over Arizal, I said it over many times, it's brought down all over, that why is Kaberes Avicha and Shmiras Shabbos said one right next to the other? Got to Arizal, and he says that Dafka and Limud Hasoid, that someone who's Mechadish Torah and Shabbos, that is the ultimate kibbut of a aim, because you are bringing, and the Lashon is bringing a Torahs to Abba Ve'ima. So, therefore, learning on Shabbos of Pasha that you have to, I'm saying if you get the great Giloi of being able to be Mechadish Torah, that is the ultimate covered Shabbos. May we all be zeicha to do that.